That is worth a hand clap. Thank you. She has, during that time period, she's increased the competitiveness of the city. She's sped up affordable housing production. She's diversified the DC economy, oversaw consistent enrollment and growth across DC public schools to its highest enrollment since home rule. She's increased satisfaction in city services, refocused efforts around achieving statehood, and invested in programs and policies that allow more families to live and thrive in the city. As we know, COVID kind of ravaged so many different cities. And during that period, she was able to guide DC through racial injustice protests, pandemic-spawned crime and unemployment increases, and events of January 6th, the insurrection. She commissioned the first Black Lives Matter public street mural. That deserves a hand clap. She issued over $2 million in unemployment, rent, and business relief and secured federal reimbursement. Throughout her leadership, DC actually leads in the US per capita for affordable housing investment. And we're one of the most expensive cities in the country. She's committed an all-time high of $1 billion of city resources to tackle affordable housing. She's committed to equity and inclusion and diversity, to the point where her team has created what we call the Green Book, as many of you have heard already, where that is over $1 billion of spending for small businesses. So over her tenure, it went from $300 million to over $1 billion. Pretty darn impressive. She's played key roles in delivering transformational economic development projects, including some managed by the developers that were on stage, The Wharf, Walter Reed, McMillan, Hill East, and St. Elizabeth's, which were my projects back in the day. Please welcome Muriel Mayor Bowser.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Standing ovation. Awesome. Woo!
Thank you.
Hi, Linda Rabbit. Good to see you. One of the first crew presidents.
Of course.
This is, Muriel, this is exciting.
Thank you.
For all of us. We appreciate that we're one of the first trade associations that you have agreed to talk to because we need business. And we want to make sure that we have the right impact on the industry. We have, as some people know, over 600 members, mainly women, but we love men, and we would love for you men to become members. And I see a few in the audience here. But we consider ourselves one of the voices of the real estate industry in general, right? And through Linda Rabbit and some other past presidents, I think Crew's really made a name for itself in the marketplace. With that said, who is Muriel Bowser?
Who is Muriel Bowser?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I'm Miranda's mom, and I am the mayor of my hometown.
Okay.
That's what sums me up.
I love it. I love it. So as you know, this audience is comprised with all edges of real estate, right? Developers, brokers, accountants, legal folks, construction companies, engineers, and the like. What do you want this audience to know in general about efforts that you are implementing or spearheading to make it easier to do business with the district?
Well, that's a great question, Genevieve, and let me thank Crew for inviting me. This is not my first time with Crew. I have supported events, and I think probably sat in a chair like this before at Crew events. And I am very grateful for all the real estate professionals who really make DC tick. And I think Crew exemplifies that DC is a great place for women who mean business. There are great opportunities here. There are companies that do well here. They're founding company owners that know that they can grow and have access to talent here. So I think Crew just exemplifies what DC is all about. And I have, throughout my career in public service, been focused on transforming communities and transforming communities by changing them. for the better and making sure that communities are getting the investment that they need. I've long been a voice, whether it was when I was an ANC commissioner and we were talking about Riggs Road and South Dakota Avenue, or now when we're talking about every part of all 8 wards of the District of Columbia. I've been an advocate for balancing the community interest and business interest. And I have been troubled throughout that time, almost 20 years now, of the polarization between the two. And I think it's so important that we go in communities, and I think it's so important, especially for the real estate professional community, to make sure that we're bridging that gap. And that's what we've been about. So I've been involved from the grassroots organizing level in my own neighborhood to transform it, to being able to lead efforts on the council to make sure that transformative projects got through, to now in my role as mayor, to setting the agenda and vision for projects, unsticking projects, which we've been able to do over the last 9 years, and deliver them so that communities are getting the housing that they need, communities are getting the health care that they need, the retail options that they need, safe streets, and that's what people want no matter where they live.
That is terrific. You touched upon, I'll put in my own words, being a catalyst for making projects happen to redevelop neighborhoods, right? And let's start off with something that is the forefront of your mind and even the district. I was pleased to find out, it was just 2 days ago, that you launched a task force to figure out how to repurpose, how to revitalize the Capital One Arena, Chinatown Gallery Place area, and basically the surrounding areas. I was equally impressed of the 2 people that you selected. Women, guys. Debbie Ratner-Salzberg, Upland Property Group, she used to be Forest City, developed the yards, as well as Jody McLean, who's a crew member, CEO of Edens, and as many of you know, redeveloped the Union Market area. Their 2 big projects are emblematic of how to take what is, call it, somewhat dilapidated and definitely undervalued neighborhoods into something great, some of the fastest growing. What is your vision or desired outcome for them to do for this task force, and why did you select them?
Well, thank you for that question, because when we were, it may have been yesterday. Was it yesterday? 2 days ago? I'm not sure. We were rolling out our task force plan and talking about the membership, and the deputy mayor, who's a woman, says, the mayor picked this great team of women, and then I realized I did. Because I didn't say, well, I'm going to call some women to do this. I thought of 2 people, developers who had done it and had done it well in the district and had been very effective. But who also are very respected across the board in the development community, in the political sphere, in the finance sphere, and who have always stepped up to support me in whatever it is. Whether I ask them to call on council members or go to community meetings or go help me recruit investment dollars to the district. And so I called them. And literally, I could hardly get my request out before they said yes. And so that's why I chose them. You also hit on one of the criteria that I had in my mind, and that was, how do we take old uses and transform them into fantastic neighborhoods? And there are many folks who've had that experience. I saw Monty, who was here earlier, and Vicki Davis, who I know is working at a Walter Reed. But we have great examples in the city of large parcels. In this case, is large for the downtown, 5 acres. And how do we transform that into a new community?
Awesome. Got to ask you this.
Sure.
Were you caught off guard? were you caught off guard by the announcement of, Monumental potentially moving
Certainly,
Caps and Wizards?
Nothing catches me off guard in real estate, I'll tell you that. But I will say I'm a little surprised about this grand announcement where there's no deal, no contract, no lease, no nothing. And so I've been involved in a lot of real estate transactions, and I don't usually make an announcement unless I have somebody who is signed on the dotted line.
There you go.
And that's just not the case. And that's why you will continue to hear people say it's not a done deal. It's not even close to a done deal. So what is important for us, and I want to be clear, is that we protect the interest of the district. We think that the best place for our teams is in Washington, D.C. After all, they're the Washington Wizards and the Washington Capitals.
And maybe Washington Commanders.
And, well, you said it. And so that's where we think our teams should play. We know that they have been incredibly, well, when I say successful, I don't mean they've been winning necessarily. But they do very well there. Yeah. And so we're going to keep focused. But I know all of you expect that I'm going to be prepared for every eventuality. Yeah. And I will say this more. We have put some very generous offers on the table with Monumental. Yeah. And the district residents will know that they were responsible offers and also responsive to what the team said that they need. So we're gonna keep moving with that course. We will protect our interests, and we will set a bold vision for Chinatown.
Awesome. And Chinatown is just one of the many great neighborhoods of the city. Given call it the COVID adverse impacts on the city. Talk about how the comeback plan is trying to reshape the narrative of this, COVID environment within DC, and what progress you've made with the comeback plan.
I think we are, I can point to a very specific thing that we're working on, and that is attracting 15,000 more people to the downtown. I think what is very different about us than some places, not all places, is the impact of the federal workforce on the downtown. That's one part. And the amount of commercial real estate that is in the downtown. And we need a better balance in our city. And so having more residential, having more people is going to help us focus on that. So just this week, I think we approved the regulations that will allow the district to partner in downtown conversions. And that's we're gonna obviously focus on nodes of activity that we think we would have the biggest impact, and work with the development and housing provider community to get that done. We recognized, and you asked me at the outset, how can we focus on ways to better do business? And one of those are, some of the policy objectives that we have as the city they're good objectives, but they're not appropriate for every project. So every project cannot always accomplish everything. And so that's why we have a special TOPA stipulation for the Housing in Downtown program, because we want to send the signal that when capital starts loosening up out here, that DC is the place that we want that capital to land. And we have to have a policy environment that's conducive to that. And I think what's important about that for the policy wonks among us and the non-policy wonks among us is it signals the council and the mayor landing in a similar place on this issue, on a sticky issue. So I think that bodes well for how we can make sure we have the policy environment that we need.
Speaking of policy, we presented, or I asked Deputy Mayor Keith Anderson to create a forum where the voices of the real estate business community could be heard. And he said, yes, okay, so it will be CREW, ULI, DCBIA that will want to coordinate with him. Will you allow that to happen? Or does he have leverage to do that?
Well,
could you be involved? Could you be involved in it?
Well, sure, but I think we have many of those forums. So I would kick that back to you and say, is one of the business forums that's existing good, or do we need like another subgroup or group to focus on? And I would push you even further to give us some like specifics. Frequently I go in a room and someone says to me, well, that DCRA and that Department of Buildings, and like we needed to do this. And then I say, well, tell me exactly, because I'm all ears, and I mean that, and with all sincerity. And then I further ask, what jurisdiction do you think is getting it in a way that we aren't getting it? And then I drill down like even further. So one specific thing that was raised to me in another setting was, people just aren't, they aren't at their desk, Mayor. They're not back. And if I want to go down to DCRA, some of it, the virtual has been good for our business. Some of it has not. And that's my experience across a few of our agencies, even though we were among the first employers to go back after COVID with June of 21. And it's important that a local government is there to service people. But this week, we announced that we would be even more in person. So instead of up to 2 days of telework for our office employees, they will be permitted up to 1 day of telework or a 4-10 work schedule, depending on what the needs of their office are. So we want our people to be there, to work with you and to serve you. We want to take the best of the things that we learned from a really kind of flip the switch virtual environment, but we also are committed to serving our residents in person.
So I like the fact that you're mentioning sort of a mandate to bring more of district workers into the office, because you of all people have talked about how that is a catalyst for more retail activity, commerce activity, using public transportation, and you have power over that. What about the federal government? I know you've had conversations with GSA leadership, Department of Homeland Security. How can you influence the federal workforce?
Well, I think that I have influenced it greatly. Let me just put it that way. And we're finally starting to see a difference. We saw in September, as an example, and I'll get more recent numbers soon, that we saw some of our highest ridership days on Metro, including the federal workforce. And I have to just publicly thank the President's Chief of Staff, Jeff Zients, because we think that he's making a difference in that conversation. He told me he would, and I think he is. And I'll just give you an anecdote, and I'm sure there may be others in the room, but I have a personal friend, works for DOJ. Everybody was fully remote, including her. Some people lived in Miami, some people lived in Chicago, DC-based employees, and they got the word that they have to come back, and they have to come back by March. And up to 3. So I think that we're starting to see that, and I think that not just Jeff, but Shalonda Young at OMB have been moving that policy.
So sticking on the theme of federal government, there's been talk for over a decade about shrinking the government footprint, federal footprint. What was it? Reduce the footprint, or freeze the footprint, reduce the footprint. And even a couple of past public building services commissioners, including Nina Albert, was very, aggressive about, okay, it's going to shrink, right? How do you see that impacting the district, since the district has 40% of federal government buildings residing in it?
It is all, as you said, it's not a new thing. We've seen it. Not only is the footprint shrinking, federal jobs are shrinking. And we think all of that impacts us. And it's not just the district, it's the national capital region. And so I think it's very, very important that we are diversifying the types of jobs that we have, and we have been on that track in the district, focused on tech, focused on our educational uses, which is I think a big growth area for us, as well as our healthcare and medical uses. And so we continue to have that focus. But I think that that we also have to think out of the box and not this kind of standard way of how we approach real estate deals. And what is a wild idea that Crew could give us about the federal space?
Maybe, guys.
So that is I'm very serious when I say that. And so here's the difference about the district. And I'm not just talking about leases, because that's a big part of the federal portfolio. But they're federal buildings that have one purpose: federal work. And if that is not going to happen in those buildings, you know why they were built. They were built to show the might of the United States of America. They were built on L'Enfant's plan, on grand avenues. They're pretty inefficient for modern work, too. And I think that's why you see some workers not really wanting to come back to those buildings.
That's right.
And so we have the opportunity to think differently about those buildings. I look at the Department of Commerce from my building downtown every day.
Yeah.
And it's
every year they have a new design plan.
What are we, what would you do with a building like that? If somebody came here and said, Crew, we're going to give you this building, give me some ideas.
We'll figure it out.
What would you do with a building like that? And so I think we have a couple of examples. Mike Milken is working on a building here at 15th, the old bank building. That is a transformational use. Mike Bloomberg took over the museum and helped attract Johns Hopkins. Transformational use.
Yeah.
Now, hopefully you don't have to be a billionaire to do all of these things, but you have to know a billionaire to do some of them.
Yeah.
But it's an idea that I think that as an industry we should be thinking about. How are we taking these majestic federal uses and doing something different with them? How are we thinking about space that would free up? Is it if the Cap 1 space materializes and we have 5 acres downtown? Well, we had 10 acres downtown and we built City Center.
That's right.
Transformational development. We will have the FBI building soon, and I have some ideas about how to make that go faster. So, including, they're going to have 1,000 people that stay here regardless of what happens between Maryland and Virginia. So we should be thinking about how we advance those discussions faster, and so that we have the opportunity to develop that land as well. We have other parts of our portfolio, including Poplar Point, the remainder of St. Elizabeth's, the balance of Hill East, RFK. So all of these opportunities that continue to persist.
I am so glad you mentioned, call it the multi-use, multi-purpose of government buildings. I was just in Philadelphia this past weekend, and talk about a city that has the majority of their buildings are historic right downtown, and they have repurposed the majority of them into commercial or residential uses. So I'm so glad to hear you say that. Let's stick on the theme of government a little bit. Okay, housing. We know that there's affordable housing crisis across the country, if not the world, right? And affordability, guys, and I know most of you know this, but that just means that your income is not going towards more than 30% of your housing costs. It doesn't mean very low income. It really means the average, workforce individual. So, given that COVID has ravaged tax revenue for many cities, including DC, I think I had read that there was going to be a $500 million shortfall over several years. What efforts have you made to at least maintaining or preserving or increasing the affordable housing count?
Well, I appreciate your introduction. We've done more than anybody in America for affordable housing, over $1 billion. We're going to hit our target of 30,000 units by 2025, I think. Awesome. But we won't have the types of dollars to go towards it that we did for the city providing gap financing. I committed to $100 million a year every year that I've been mayor. In the last 3 years, during the COVID years, we were able to do more. So that's how we got to over $1 billion, I think almost $1.5 billion towards HPTF. So that is one thing that will change in a tighter budget. So the public dollars that we do have to go further.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about encouraging housing downtown. You already mentioned this housing downtown initiative and the office conversion tax abatement. Could you give just a little bit more color around timing of some of that and some of the successful office conversions?
I would really have Nina come back to talk to you about that, but I did get a number that 11 are in the pipeline, which is very good news. Yeah. We've had developers, our local developers and developers from around the country come and talk to us about that. They see us as leading with the tax abatement, and maybe something that everybody's not doing around the country. Yeah. So we think that there's going to be a lot of interest. What I'm pushing the team on is how to create nodes, if you will, so that we're concentrating some of our dollars. So the impact of more people downtown will help. We have a downtown DC action committee that's also going to have some recommendations, I think in the next month or so, that may be a part of that discussion. The other thing that I'll mention is $500 million. You probably know that I have a $500 million offer on the table for Monumental and Cap One. And we think that's the best use of it. The second best use of it is for the future of Gallery Place. And so I think it's important in our political discussions that we're protecting those dollars and that we're investing them downtown. We're not splintering them up in small projects that don't have the same impact. And that is important political discussion that you should be engaging in. And the time is now. You know our budget cycle. I'm working with our agencies right now on their priorities, on our revenue, given our revenue estimates, which by the way are strong. I want to be very clear with everybody. The CFO just came back with a surplus from his last estimate. That's great. So we have money over what we expected. And that continues to be the case. So there's a lot of angst out there, I know, among property owners about values, about assessments, about all of those things. And this is kind of what I know about our downtown market. For the last 20, 15 years that I've been involved, people have made a lot of money downtown. A lot, right? Am I right? Okay. People have made a lot of money downtown, including the district. The district has collected a lot of tax dollars based on downtown values. And it is true, we're having a few soft years. But they will go up. They will turn. And so that's what we're asking the property owning community downtown to hold on, stay invested. And I see evidence of that. Sometimes the district buys buildings and nobody's giving us a break. When we're talking about, I was like, hold up, these prices should be lower now, right? Because you're telling me how tough it is out there. And that's just not what I'm seeing. So either people are holding on to their property, waiting for some turns, and that's probably what will happen because the district is a good bet. Cities remain a great bet, and this city especially remains a great bet.
Awesome. So I think we only have a couple more minutes. Would love to open it up to someone on the mic, maybe take just a few questions, and please be brief. Be brilliant and be gone. So name and company. That's it. Nobody. Vicki, you had a whole laundry list of things.
Thanks so much for speaking with us. I have a question about the confluence of work from home and going back to the office, but also the advantage that work from home brought a lot of caregivers. And how the city is going to help make sure that as people come back to the office that they're supported as caregivers in the community.
Well, you talked about DC government, I assume. We have a lot of supports for caregivers, including paid family leave and a lot of various ways to get leave. We will also, depending on our employees' like work duties and tour of duty, be flexible about schedule. So for example, not everybody will have to come in at 8:30 if that's better for your schedule. Maybe you can come in at 10 and work till 6 or 6:30. So that's what we're very supportive of. So we think as a government that we are competitive with pay, we're competitive with benefits, but we're also a local government and we provide local services. And I believe, and it matters in this case what I believe, that we better serve our residents in person.
Awesome. Any other questions? Julia Stevens. Oh, that's it. Okay, that's it. I'm going to take 30 seconds. Mayor, this is going to be a speed round. I'm going to say a word. You give me a word or phrase in response.
Okay.
DEI.
Equity RFP
All right. Downtown.
is back.
COVID.
Hurts.
Motherhood.
Amazing.
Real estate.
Value.
That's good. Leader.
Us.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mayor.
Thank you.